frequently approached through a medical model, which limits access to education, employment, and community participation. Survivors of sexual or gender-based violence are often silenced by stigma or fear, while elderly individuals living alone in rural areas may be completely disconnected from formal support. These social and cultural dynamics not only restrict access to care, but also violate core human rights principles, including autonomy, dignity, and participation. And the fourth one, and finally, the systemic barriers. There are significant systemic barriers, especially around governance and coordination. Care and support services are often fragmented across health, education, social protection, and labor sector. This leads to confusion in service delivery, incompleted referral pathways, and inconsistent case follow-up. In Armenia, we have the same situation, unfortunately, and I'm sure that there are many communities that have the same. But what is good, and for social workers we can speak, it's like how we can, how then we can solve this issue and how social worker can remove these barriers. Having outlined the core barriers that we had, now we know that social worker can support to change these barriers. This is, I will start to say it's again some systematic views to share that we can change it again as a four barriers, then to change anything in this for addressing these four barriers. Addressing policy barriers, it means that social workers play a crucial role in identifying policy gaps and bringing the voices of affected individuals into policy process. For example, we engage in need assessment, collect evidence from the field, and participate in consultation with government and civil society actors to inform legal reforms. We also can contribute to drafting national guidance, proposing care standards, and ensuring that legislation is aligned with international human rights instruments. Second one is responding to economic barriers. At the community level, social workers support families to access entitlements, navigate social protection schemes, and advocate for financial assistance for caregivers and individuals with high support needs. We also document and expose the economic impact of unpaid care work by tracking time use, mapping hidden labor, and advertising for caregiver supports. In same region, social workers have a collaboration with local authorities and civil society organizations to create vocational training programs and income generation initiatives for women caregivers, helping them rebuild economic independence. This is something that usually in Armenia we can see. The third one is challenging social and cultural barriers. Social workers are trained to understand the cultural dimensions of care, but also to challenge harmful norms and stereotypes. In Armenia and many similar contexts, this means working to reframe caregiving as a shared social responsibility, not just a private duty of women. We lead conversation on gender roles, promote inclusive communities, narratives, and engage religious and traditional leaders in public education efforts. Social workers also have a frontline role in protection the rights and dignity of individuals who face stigma, whether it's a person with disabilities, survivor of violence, or older person. We ensure that people are treated not as a dependents, but as active right holders by promoting informed consent, supporting decision making, and inclusive participation in care planning. And the fourth one is overcoming systemic and institutional barriers. Social workers are often the only professionals who operate across multiple systems: health, education, justice, housing, protection, and this gives us a unique role to building coordination. We work to develop referral pathways, link individuals with services, and advocate for integrated case management system. We collaborate with other professionals, nurses, psychologists, legal experts to make care holistic and person-centered. In Armenia, particularly in emergency setting, maybe you listen, the displacement, when we had a lot of displacement people, social workers have acted as a connective tissue between institutions and communities, ensuring that survivors of violence, persons with disabilities, at-risk children are not left behind when systems break down. And in that situation, really, Armenian system break down. We act as a social workers, we act with empathy, but also with strategy. We support, but also push. And in doing so, we help transform care from a charity model into a rights-based, inclusive, and sustainable system. I don't want to speak a lot of with Armenian examples. Maybe after the discussion, after the presentation, we will have a discussion and I will speak. But what can social workers do? Usually, key action that we are doing, I would like to share it's in three levels: at the local level, national level, and the global one. At the local level, local communities are where care is lived and where change often brings. Social worker can build trusted relationship between families and caregivers, ensuring care plans are tolerant, participatory, and responsive to local needs. We can facilitate community awareness on the value of caregiving, gender equality, and the rights of persons receiving care. We can promote and model inclusive, person-centered care practices in homes, schools, shelters, and service centers. We can work collaborative with local municipalities and civil society organizations to co-create services that reflect real needs, not just the policy assumptions. At the national level, policy and budgeting decisions shape the landscape of care system. Social workers can and must contribute to shaping this agenda. We can participate in consultation and advisory councils to ensure care policy reflect the life relations for both carers and care recipients. Advocate for the formal recognition of unpaid care and push for the integration of care into social protection, labor, and gender policies. Promote the professionalism and protection of the care workforce, including fair wages, training standards, mental health support to care workers. Engage in data collection and research to highlight gaps and trends, which can help decision makers understand the real cost of ignoring care. In the global level, social worker must be at the table, not just listening, but shaping it. We can, as now we are, engage with international bodies, like one of them, International Federation of Social Work, ILO, World WHO, or any other, contribute global dialogues on care through research, publication, cross-country learning, what now we are doing, and for that I'm very much appreciated this. Join global campaigns, because without joining and without saying that sustainable development goals and broader social justice efforts start with care, we cannot do anything. We must insist across all these levels. We must do. Care is not the charity, it's a matter of justice. And social workers are not only caregivers or facilitators, we are advocates. We are connectors and we are catalysts for lasting change. And we have seen throughout today's sessions that care and support are not side issues. They are fundamental to human dignity and social justice. Whether care is providing informally within families through professional services or across institutions, it must be grounded in human rights, equality, and shared responsibility. The current system in many countries, including my own, are still shaped by gender inequality, under underinvestment, fragmentation, and stigma. But we, as a social worker, are uniquely equipped to challenge those systems and to help shape new ones. We bring the voice of people to the center. We bridge gaps between policy and lived experience. And we hold space for healing, inclusion, and transformation. In Armenia, as in many other contexts, I have seen social workers step in when systems fail. But we are also doing something more important. We are building the systems, and that should exist in the first place. So I leave you with this message. Let us keep pushing locally, nationally, and globally for care and support systems that are well funded, inclusive, accessible, and rooted in dignity. Let us recognize care as a right, not a privilege. And let us recognize social workers, not only the service providers, but as an essential leaders in the global movement for justice and care. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer in any question that you will have. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sona. You very beautifully connected all the discussion points from previous three speakers and then connected well to the role of social workers. Very much appreciated. So now we open the discussion to all participants. And then I understand that Annalisa from the organizer side can share the key questions already raised from the participants. So Annalisa, maybe you can share them to kickstart the discussion. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Zako. So we received many comments reinforcing what speakers have mentioned. And then coming to the question, Majog asked, in terms of mothers, has not been receiving recognition in South Sudan particularly. So his question is, how would we be able to convince a society to recognize the suffering of mothers and empower them to realize their contribution is being recognized? So I give the floor.
Well, should I go? Yeah. Well,
sorry, maybe Annalisa, how many questions do you have?
So 1, 2, 5, 6, more or less. Yeah.
And then are they all different points or they could be grouped? For example, is there any other points on mothers so that Afaf may be able to answer in a grouped way?
No, I don't see other questions on mothers. No. So
okay, so then maybe now we can ask Afaf to respond to questions. And then meanwhile, Annalisa, if you can see what could be the other questions, whether that can be grouped or not, and then if that can be addressed to several speakers if needed. Okay. So now, please, Afaf, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I want to say that it's not only in your country that mothers are not recognized, unfortunately. And that's what we fight for every day at Make Mothers Matter. More globally and nationally, as Sona was explaining, but more globally at the UN and participating to this kind of meetings and being in coalitions and making the whole decision makers taking having awareness about the the role of mothers and how, when they are supported, they can bring so much to the society and peace in this very difficult world today. So yes, I guess we need, what we fight for is at least to introduce the world mother in the text, in the resolution, and we're very happy that last week, I think, there's an agreed convention, I think, where they mentioned that mothers are suffering from motherhood penalty in terms of work. So it's coming, I guess. But yes, we have to keep fighting. Yes, it's the agreed conclusion that was adopted at the 69th Commission on the Status of Women, recognizing a maternity-related discrimination. So things are changing little by little. Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Faf. And then maybe if I may add, that it might be also important to ensure the equality in the family so that all women in the family can also speak out and participate in a public discussion, as Faf mentioned, because it may not be only mothers, but also grandmothers. I saw that some comments made. And then also young girls as siblings or daughter, they might be also providing a lot of unpaid care and support work within the family, and then their voices should be heard too. So the equality in the family and in a public space might be relevant. And then I'm just want to check if any other speakers might want to make a comment on this issue, on this point before moving to the next question. If not, Annalisa, please introduce the next question, please.
Thanks. So Bashir, who works as a caregiver, asked an important question on how to protect the people that caregivers take care of. So when they are attacked or they are mistreated, how caregivers can provide protection to those who they care of.
Is there any speaker who might want to respond to this issue? For example, Mark, as from the perspective of persons with disabilities, what kind of protection do you think that care providers or supporters can provide protection to those who are requiring care and support, if I understand the question correctly?
So the question is, what kind of protection and do people with disability need, or the caregivers, before I reply?
So how the caregivers or people providing support to person with disability can protect the person with disability who is receiving care and support?
I would talk in terms of if, in terms of protection and information of the person with disabilities. There's some information that the person can be shared to the caregivers which not needed to go public. And one of the protection that they can provide to make sure that there's no leakage of information going outside of in terms of the person with a disability, they have person information that they can share to caregivers, and the caregivers should protect that information, not to share with others. I think one of the important protection that caregivers should look at and make sure they keep privacy to the from people with a disability should not share their private information.
Thank you. So it will be very important that caregivers or supporters respect the right to privacy and confidentiality of a person with disability who are receiving care and support. That would be the big protection, right? And then, Mark, I think you also mentioned in your presentation that understanding and listening to those who are receiving care and support, so the caregivers or the supporters listening and then understanding what those who are receiving care and support needs and the wants and the choose would be very important, and that would be another forms of protection of the rights of persons who are receiving care and support. I think. Is there any other speakers who want to make comment on it? Or if any other participants who might want to jump in and comment on it for all these questions, that would be also welcome. Okay, if not, maybe Annalisa, you can go to the next question. And then also, if anybody who wants to come back to the point already discussed, also feel free to do so after the question. Yeah, Annalisa, please go to the next question.
Yes, we have two questions on domestic workers. So Deepali asked, how can we enhance the skills of domestic workers? I saw that Raina already replied, but maybe for the benefit of everyone can be, this question can be addressed. And also another question on how can service of domestic workers can be regulated. And this participant raised the issue of domestic workers mistreating children or people they take care of. So yeah, this is the two questions for Raina.
Yeah, so Raina, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Annalisa, and thank you for this wonderful question, which addresses the skill of the domestic worker. Because within the Federation, as we have interviewed more domestic workers and talked about their lived experiences, we have realized that domestic workers are actually skilled already. It's not that domestic workers do not have skill. They actually have a lot of skill that they've acquired over their time, either through experience of working many years as a domestic worker or a domestic care worker, or either through other trainings that they might have attended, whether formal or informal. Therefore, what we advocate for is a skills recognition framework, which is a framework that already recognizes the skills that domestic workers have. And therefore, having a skills framework that essentially shows the skill level of the domestic worker, which they currently have, and that translating into wage increase. One of the things that I noticed within the question was that somebody actually asked if there is a community of practice for this. That's a great question too, because this is a very, very new concept about skills recognition, and it has come mostly from marginalized care workers, such as domestic workers and community health workers, that we have skills and they need to be recognized. So there is no global framework for it yet. However, we have an example in Taiwan. Taiwan is implementing the recognition of skills. So after 6 years of being a domestic caretaker, a domestic worker who essentially does care, you are recognized as an intermediate skilled domestic caretaker, and consequently you also become eligible for higher wage increase. So that is one way in which it is being implemented. It is one of the better models that we have for implementation of skill recognition. But we are still working to actually figure out how this will work in many different contexts. In Latin America or in Asia, the approach might just be very different geographically, and we're still trying to figure that out. To answer the second question, actually, yes, completely. I mean, there is this tension between the caregiver and the care recipient at the home. And that is actually one of the reasons why we are actively collaborating with groups representing people with disability to actually figure out how their rights and our rights can actually be seen in tandem. I think one of the points that the OHCHR report actually talks about is that these rights cannot be fragmented. They cannot be seen as two different parts. And in fact, the fact that both caregivers and care recipients are very marginalized communities, it is it makes more sense for us to come together to fight for our rights rather than being pitted against each other in terms of competition. So you're absolutely right that when different kinds of abuse happen at the home, it can happen on part of the caregiver or on part of the care recipient. And building alliances together so that we can combine these rights and then advocate for all these rights together under one framework, I think would be the solution. But to regulate domestic work, I would still go through the 5R model and look at what are the kinds of labor rights and worker rights that domestic workers are missing. That is to ensure that as workers and as the labor or the care force, workforce and labor, their rights as workers are respected, because that is where they have one of the most vulnerable abuses of human rights. So that's what I would like to conclude, that it's a huge umbrella of both labor rights and connecting with different groups to form alliances of groups and demands, if that helps.
Thank you, Reina. And then I agree with you on the point that probably we need a much more dialogue and a discussion between the different rights holders, because the violence and exploitation and abuse can happen from those who are providing care and support against those who are requiring care and support, and then that vice versa too. Sometimes those who are requiring care and support might be violating the rights of those who are providing care and support. And then oftentimes that is happening because there is no enabling conditions for both who are providing and requiring care and support to enjoy their rights. And then just talking about domestic workers may be violating the rights of the children, for example, they take care of, that might be the case, but also oftentimes the domestic workers might have violated their rights to care and then ensure the safety of their own children at workplace as well. So we need to see that who are involved in this, the context, and then how to protect everybody's rights in a win-win strategy. And then again, there the role of social workers might be great. Just checking that if anybody else want to make comments on this point. If not, Annalisa, please go to the next question.
Thanks, Asako. Yes, we have two questions that I think can be answered by more broad and general question that can be answered by all panelists. The first is from Leilani, and she introduced saying inform, support, challenge, and coordinate. As a group now attending this CPD, what one action can we take to contribute to addressing these barriers? And then she suggests to International Federation of Social Workers to highlight through our website or a newsletter how to if we can run a campaign or how can we how the International Federation of Social Workers can contribute on this. And then Mohamed asked, how can we advocate for increased funding for care and support systems at local, national, and global levels? So one question on what one action can social workers take to contribute to addressing barriers to the right to care and support, and Mohamed on how can funding be increased for care and support systems.
Thank you. Maybe I will continue to answer. Thanks. I will come from the end. There is no certain any one action that you can do and say that the funding will be got or any barriers we cannot have. There isn't. We are not the person who can do everything. Just we need to listen person, understand the needs in local level, in national level, then in globally or internationally to raise these needs and say that, you know, there is this or that barriers and we have these 10, I don't know, 15, 100 action we need to do. One of them can be very urgent, and we, for example, we can say if we don't have this SOP or we don't have this document, we cannot continue. But in a world, there isn't any certain one action that we can do, and all barriers we can see there isn't any barriers. Just as a social worker, my advice is to continue to work wherever you are working and trust that one day you will see these barriers out. Because when we are speaking about the stigma, this is cultural and behavioral exchange. But now when I'm looking back, I'm seeing, even in my country, there was a lot of stigmas, but now in some action we did. And for example, now we have a centers for gender-based violence. 10 years before this, we haven't even one. Just we trust and we work. Trust your work, do what you are doing, listen your beneficiaries and do what they need. Because without listening the individuals in vulnerable situation and starting to develop their need as an action, we cannot succeed. This is the way what I think that we need to do. Thanks, over.
Thank you. And then I can see that some people raised hands. Irina, do you want to come in? Irina, if you're coming in, you might need to unmute yourself and then speak. Okay, if not, I will go to Reina, and then Reina, if you want to come in after Reina, please free to do so. Then first Reina, please.
Thank you so much, Asaku. Since these two questions have been asked, I think these two questions for me are interrelated. If there is one thing that I would probably want the attendees of this particular course to take away, is probably the idea that care is a public good. And the reason why I'm saying that is because no matter where we go, no matter how many different kinds of caregivers and care recipients group we align with, the one common thing that we have with everyone is that care is a public good, which means that the state should be participating more in the provisioning and distributing of the state and distributing of care, and state should also be funding more of care initiatives within the state. So this is probably one demand that has been common across groups. And that also leads to the question of funding, because there are different groups that are working on different aspects of funding and how it relates to care. Like, for example, there are a lot of studies that are done by feminist organizations that show that with the increased privatization of care, the rights of care workers are actually hampered. Care workers such as domestic workers, community health workers, nurse workers, and so forth. So the increased investment in public care, there is an increase in the quality of human rights and labor rights that care workers can actually access. So if we can actually do some kind of studies that show these relationships and how public financing of care actually leads to human rights conditions for care workers, maybe even for care recipients, this is a scope that we can kind of expand to. And this is where we can have conversations at the global and local and national levels on how is it that we can advocate for more funding of care. I mean, definitely there is a clear relationship between increased public funding in care and better human rights and labor rights for care workers. So thank you.
Thank you. Afaf, you want to come in?
Yes, I would like to add, and I totally agree with Reina. And I believe, I hope, and I like to believe that something will change around care as the society is changing, the challenges, the issues, climate change, elder population, that something will be done, and that we will finally realize that without care, there is no economy. And we could see that some economists are already talking about evaluating this care work in the GDP and giving it a value, a real value. Or we're working, for example, for to obtain care credits when you do this invisible care work, of course, but it's not the paid one, that you will have some recognition and get some care credits that value what you do, and that you can also, that you have developed skills that are interesting for the private sector, for the companies. So I think the more and more we will talk about it, and I think the first thing it's that it has to have value, and like a economic value. You have to put figures, money behind what it means to talk like economists. Otherwise, it's something that is really taken for granted and not seen and very underestimated. So research, data, this kind of actions have to be developed more and more. Thank you.
Thank you, Afaf. I'm also just adding to this discussion that in terms of recognizing the economic social value of care and support work, a lot of work is being done now in the Latin America of collecting data on how much time is used for unpaid care and support work, etc. And then ILO is now mandated to develop statistical definition of care and support work too. So there are work ongoing on the point that I've made. And then also currently there are a couple of presumptions which are not really helpful in existing care systems. One is that many countries still prioritize or invest a lot in institutionalized forms of care, like large residential institutions, and then put people who are requiring care and support in there would be the easy solution. But those are actually more costly and then often more exploitative to the people working there, and then complete denial of human rights who are placed in that kind of institutions. And whereas there could be more cost-effective, but more human rights-based care and support provision possible at the community level as well. And then those efforts are also being explored. And then another unhelpful presumption is that often we think that there is a fixed amount of pie, like financial resources or other resources, and then those who are providing care and support and who are requiring care and support compete within those fixed pie, that who will take more funding for their rights and then who will lose more. But the important thing that our report also identified is that it's important to enlarge the pie so that the both sides of rights, often exist in one person, will be fully funded. And in this regard, under international human rights law, states have obligations to mobilize and distribute resources for the realization of minimum essential level of economic, social, and cultural rights, like right to work or right to social security, including the rights to live in a community, etc. So the legal framework is there. How, as many of the speakers pointed out, how we shift the paradigm and the concept, perception of care and support. And then we also conducted recently the interview with a prominent economist and the people who are working on the care and support systems. And then they say that we really have to change the concept that care and support is about everybody. It's not about some groups or some people. It's about everybody. Therefore, there need to be the entire society commitment, including financial commitment, to redistribute the care and support responsibility and then ensure the right to access to human rights care and support. So that might be something that we could think about. Annalisa, is there any additional questions? Please go ahead.
Yes, we have one question for Sona. on how do social workers can approach working with clients who may have different values and beliefs than social workers' own values and beliefs. And then another question on domestic workers, so just to move quicker, on how can the service of domestic workers be regulated. Oh, apologies, I missed the one. So the question was on how to ensure mental health for domestic workers. Yeah, that's the two questions. Sorry, let's come back if the two questions are not clear.
Okay,
Yes,
Annalisa,
please.
is there, sorry, Sona, before you go on, is there any other questions remaining? Because we are getting closer to the end time, so I want to make sure.
Yeah, I would say these two, and then we received many comments. Yeah, but mainly the two main questions we have left are these two. Yeah.
Okay, so then maybe we can close the questions with those two, and we will have a few minutes at the end from International Federation of Social Workers. So first, Sona, please go ahead.
Just wanted to ask to repeat the question.
Yes. How do social workers approach working with clients who may have different values or beliefs than social workers' own values and beliefs?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for this question. How many people in the world that we can say that such kind of values we can see? As usual, I will say that social workers, you have the same value, different value, you are undervalued that. You need to work as a human rights based and person centered approach. Just the first action I will advise, listening actively and without judgment, because everyone needs to listen, to be listened. And social workers first think what we need to do is to listen the client, to listen the beneficiary, and without judgment understand what they want. The second one is the build trust slowly and ask a question to ourselves. Maybe this value is not for me the value. I don't think so, because a social worker needs to understand all values, but we need to ask what behavior in that value and what the beneficiary, the client wants. The third action I will advise to setting clear boundaries and to understand what we can do and what the beneficiary can do. This will be support us as a social worker a lot, and we can understand what the client can do, what we can do, and what is our merging part. The fourth is exploring underlying needs, to understand the needs and go beyond the needs, like to understand the needs and react the needs, not the person or the value, and to empower any person without controlling. I think that if we empower a person not to control, we can understand all values. Over. Thanks.
Thank you. Now I see that a couple of hands raised. So I would like to give more people to speak. So Priska, if it's okay, can I take some more hands and then go back to Reina for the last question?
Okay, it's just those who raise hands, just be short.
Yeah.
In your just raise a question, so keep it short and give everyone an opportunity. Thank you.
So then, yeah, Pujono?
Yes, it's me.
Yeah, please come, and thanks in advance for being short.
All right, thank you. I would like to advise how social workers should behave in the case where the environment so blatantly and grossly against the principle of human rights, and where the states or the occupying forces completely disregard and violate the human rights. Where do we stand in that situation? Thank you.
Okay, Jono, so the question is how social workers should play a role in the situation that states or occupying authority is disregarding human rights of people in that country.
Stay in the middle.
Yeah.
In the
Okay.
individual
So
aspect.
right, that question might need a little bit of thinking. So before that, sorry, how can I say your name? Kadi Malik, please come in. And then after Kadi Malik, I will go back to Reina for answering the last questions, and then see if anybody can answer Jono's question. Kadi Malik, please go ahead.
Doesn't really work to unmute
He's
him.
not
Anna,
able to. Oh,
Sorry.
yes. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, all of them. My name is Abdul Malik from East Africa, especially Somalia. I'm especially Somalia. I'm professional social worker and community social worker. So most of them in Somalia, there is a lot of problem in domestic or pattern groups. So sometimes they meet up violence, and that violence affects children and women. They are mostly vulnerable for that issue. So I have a question related to the care and support system for those who are vulnerable to the domestic violence. So what are the key components that social workers effectively care and support to those who affect that violence to their partner, especially children who are witness for the beating their parents, especially their mother. The other question is how do social workers assist those who need support, those who need care? In my country, Somalia, there is a lot of cases we meet. So, but we don't have a budget to support or to give care. There is a limitation to non-governmental NGOs, and even there is a limitation for the institutions, government institution support for those who meet those who have a victim to their partners or inside the domestic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the clock, and then at the end of the session time. So do you mind, Priska, is it possible to take note of those questions made from Jono and Captain Malik, and then also Ahmed, who is raising hand? If you could type the comment, the question in the comment, and then see whether we can respond later on or respond in the next session. What do you think, Priska?
Yes, that's a good idea. Let's save those questions and see what we do. We also have questions from the past session.
Yeah.
We take all our questions and notes that we have in the chat. We collect them and we'll use them for further developing and understanding for care and support system and the meaning for social workers. As said in the past session, we have the idea to prepare a policy paper for the IFSW Global General Meeting, so that we can somehow link this global document and understanding to a language that we and you, my dear colleagues, globally can use. If I just can say my goodbye words.
Sorry, Priska, if we can have 2 more minutes, maybe 1 minute to answer for Reina to answer the last written questions shared, and then 1 minute for you to conclude.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, Reina, do you think you can quickly respond to the question on regulation of domestic workers' work?
Yes, quick answer. I think the question is about mental health of domestic workers. So I will just take 2 points. Point number 1 is access to social protection, including health insurance. And that health insurance should cover mental health of workers, especially domestic workers. And secondly would be freedom of association, which is the right to form unions, because that is not only about representation, that is also about peer support. For example, we have had examples of domestic workers' children being taken care of by other domestic workers in the unions as they were working. And unions also provide support in cases of like gender-based violence, economic violence. The union members actually provide support for access to justice. So for me, to improve the mental health of domestic workers, it will be 2 aspects: access to social protection, including health insurance, and freedom of association, which leads to pure support and access to justice. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I hand it over to you, Priska, to conclude the session.
Hey, Raina, you're really speaking fast. I'm not that fast. Okay, hey, thank you so much. Yeah, it's just amazing to follow the discussion. So from my side, having the honor to represent the International Federation of Social Workers, thank you for being with us, attending this session. And, you know, we are more than 300 people here on Zoom, and we also have it on YouTube as a live stream. The interest is really high in this course. We're really surprised. Thank you, Ashaka and Annalisa, for establishing this whole course. That's obviously we have really catched a good momentum for having this course. There's a need. And dear colleagues globally, I mean, there's so many in here. Aren't we just a change that happens? Aren't we all aware of the need to make unpaid and paid care work more visible as a first step to really increase the visibility, to reach the national and global level? We need to be visible, as we have heard in various speeches here. Mark, I've heard you saying that you feel yourself responsible for your need, but also for the people who take care. And I've also heard you saying there's a couple of rights that you raised that are necessary for you, but also those who take care. We have heard it from all over that we care also for each other. And somehow that brings me to the People's Charter that the International Federation of Social Workers co-created with other global organizations, that has an understanding of values, how we can move on and co-create a change. So you might want to have a look on this document. And as we are all social workers, we share a global definition of social work. We share values, a code of ethics. We share policy papers, see them as guidance. And I hope you can liaise with colleagues in your national association and empower each other through this co-creation and connecting with colleagues. And same as we can connect with global bodies as we have it here and with OHCHR. So we try to do the same on a global level. So thank you all for joining this session and take those messages with you. Asakura, the bird goes back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you very much for all the participants for active engagement, and then all speakers for excellent intervention. And then, as Priska mentioned, please leave your comments and questions in the comment boxes so that the International Federation of Workers can take that forward in possible policy guidance, etc., etc. And then I understand that the third session of the course will be talking about the rights of social workers themselves and then other issues. So please stay tuned, and then hopefully see you again next week.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.